I want you to hit me as hard as you can.
Hey everybody, it's Chris Bumbray here again for JOBLO.com with another Best Movie You Never Saw, and this week we're taking a look at Cold in July. In this one, Michael C. Hall plays a man named Richard Dane who accidentally kills a home invader and now must contend with the dead man's father, played by the late great Sam Shepard, who's eager for some payback. But is the dead man actually who the cops say he is? And in addition to Michael C. Hall and Sam Shepard, this also co-stars the great man, myth, and legend named Don Johnson.
I believe in miracles.
It's also written by Nick D'Amici and Jim Mickle, based on the novel by Joe R. Lansdale, and it's also directed by Mickle, and Mickle and D'Amici ended up spinning this off into a Sundance original series called Hap and Leonard, which was based on the extended universe of Joe R. Lansdale's books, and ran for 3 glorious seasons on the Sundance Network, but alas, was cancelled. I was lucky enough to attend the premiere, and funny, I was seated directly in front of the great Don Johnson. If you know my writing, and you know my reviews, and especially if you listen to my podcast, The Beard and the Bald, you'll know that I'm a massive Don Johnson fan. Alex Mady, who's one of the writers here at JOBLO, actually sent me an autographed copy of the Don Johnson album Heartbeat. You see, Alex didn't care or want the album anymore, but knew that I would treasure it, and sure enough, it has become a treasured possession of mine. I was a massive fan, and the publicist said, "Oh, Chris, we're just going to sit you with Don's family." Don's family. So I was seated directly in front of him with literally his knees against the back of my seat pretty much the entire film because the library theater rows are tight. I was very nervous. I didn't want to make myself come off as a loser, so I actually didn't say anything to Don Johnson. But I was in the presence of the coolest of the cool. But even cooler, right in front of me was Sam Shepard. He could probably feel my knees against his seat the entire film, so I was literally stuck between Sam Shepard and Don Johnson the entire movie. It was pretty cool, but also very nerve-wracking, especially when none other than Kurt Russell stopped by to chat with Sam and Don and say hello to them. And then, if that wasn't cool enough, Goldie Hawn swung by and told Kurt that they had to go back and take their seats. Never have I been in the crosshairs of so much star power. Trying not to come across as, well, the geek that I am, I kept my head down and didn't make my presence known. Truth be told, I was shitting bricks. I'm sure they would have been nice enough, and years later, in fact, I did interview Johnson, and you know what? He was a pretty great guy. But back to the movie. Cold in July got some pretty great reviews out of Sundance and was picked up by IFC Films, who opened it theatrically to not great box office, but I imagine that ancillary sales were brisk enough that, of course, we got Hap and Leonard. I absolutely loved this film, but often it's very easy to get caught up in a festival atmosphere and overpraise something like this. I watch so many movies for the website that I rarely revisit anything unless I have a very compelling reason. And before watching it again recently, I honestly was kind of nervous about looking at it one more time because I hadn't revisited it since Sundance. It lived in that place of my mind, and also I can't deny the fact that sitting right in front of Don Johnson and right behind Sam Shepard kind of gave me a certain buzz that maybe affected my thoughts on the film. That said, watching the movie again, I'm happy to say that it holds up extremely well, and I may have actually liked it even more on the second viewing because, you know what, I wasn't nervous as fuck this time. Knowing how it plays out, I was better able to appreciate Mickle's style. Now, what's really cool about Cold in July is that it's almost a trilogy unto itself. Each third of the film occupies a different genre. The first third is pretty much horror with Sam Shepard, this unknowable figure who you're pretty sure is going to come in and destroy everyone in his path. Michael C. Hall is the normal guy living in the 1980s in Texas, sporting a pretty awful hairstyle, but, you know, all around a pretty solid dude. The middle third transforms into a mystery as they try to piece together who the man Hall really killed was, and it builds up the relationship between Shepard and Hall. Shepard, of course, doesn't turn out to be nearly as bad as he seems in the first third. Now, what's really amazing about this movie is that if the middle third is a mystery, the last third of the movie is non-stop action, like legit 1980s action with gunfights, shit talk, everything you want. Now, this is where Hall and Shepard team up with Don Johnson, delivering an iconic performance as a Texas private eye named Jim Bob Luke, team up to wreak vengeance on a gang of serial killers / pornographers who are on the run from the Dixie Mafia and led by the great Wyatt Russell. Don Johnson himself went on the record as saying that he absolutely loved the role, telling the AV Club in his Random Roles interview that when you've been at this for as long as I have, you kinda get a sense for directors that have film sense and those that don't. I was pretty dead on with Jim Mickle. He's gifted. I usually don't even watch my movies, but you know what? I've seen this one a couple of times. Don, the coolest of the cool. Cold in July is actually an amazing little thrill ride, anchored by the spot-on casting. Hall is pretty great as the soft-hearted everyman hero, while the late Sam Shepard is at his grizzled best as the grieving dad. Also, whoever really got to see Sam Shepard in an action movie? I mean, he was pretty badass. Best of all though, I have to say, no surprise there, is Don Johnson in what probably turned out to be something of a comeback part for him, paving the way for a pretty nifty second wind in his career that continued on Watchmen and in movies like Alex of Venice, Brawl in Cell Block 99, and a lot more. He's kind of the ideal Lansdale hero, and I'm always kind of upset that he never turned up on Hap and Leonard recreating the role of Jim Bob, because I'd love to see him do it, and Jim Bob's a big figure in Lansdale's fiction, but alas, it was cool while it lasted. Plus, it's got a really neat John Carpenter style score by Jeff Grace, and the lensing by Ryan Samuel is actually a lot like Dean Cundy's work on movies like Halloween. Now, there are a lot of great scenes in this movie. The climatic shootout is amazing where people are losing body parts and it's just absolutely gory, but I have to say, the coolest moment is when Don Johnson shows up to take down a thug that's twice his size and half his age with some dirty play and attitude.
That's for my car. And that's for my hat.
Now, if you want to see Cold in July, it's pretty easy to find. It's on DVD, Blu-ray, and Netflix. And I have to admit that Cold in July, despite the fact that I was worried that maybe it wouldn't hold up, actually holds up beautifully. It's a slam-bang indie thriller action flick, and a must if you're a fan of guys like John Carpenter, genre mashups, or any of the actors involved, especially Don Johnson.
Papa was a rolling stone.
Also, make sure to check out Hap and Leonard, which is streaming on Netflix now. It was a great show while it lasted, and a lot of the same Cold in July team is involved. So if you like this movie, there's a whole lot more to dig into. For JOBLO.com, I'm Chris Bumbray.